Robbie, get out of there. And there's the big girl.
Well, looks like we are back in the helicopter on our way to Jurassic Park. You'd think the last few disastrous trips to the island would keep us from wanting to come back. Yet here we are. The last time we were going over Jurassic Park analog horror, we were looking at scene recreations from the films, essentially giving us an alternate perspective on how certain events had played out. And this journey is going to be a little similar. Way back during the very first video we did on Jurassic Park analog horror, now 2 years old at this point, Jesus, we briefly covered some of the works of Ali Awada. This channel had some really neat animations taking place in the Jurassic Park universe, except it was doing what we had wanted the films to do since the very beginning, adapt the books more faithfully. The one I remember the most has to be The Infant, where these tiny little dinosaurs essentially eat a baby. Crazy shit. Still, I have yet to read the Jurassic Park books. I know, it's been years now since I said I would get to them, and here I am just lying to your faces. But let me tell you, once I get my hands on them, it'll all change. Needless to say, this channel has been pumping out Jurassic Park content like crazy, with much more animated works, some almost being full-fledged films. The most recent addition to this catalog, however, has been a collection called Muldoon's Logs, and there has been 3 released so far. If these tapes are going to be following a similar formula, then we should be getting another look at what it would have looked like if the Jurassic Park books were brought to life, giving us a nice blend of what looks familiar from the movies and the more in-depth stories that reside in the novel. As always, be sure to check out the original channel before diving on over here back into the 4+ Jeep to start the tour. Like I said earlier, there is a ton of other Jurassic Park related animations that I could only imagine are definitely worth your time. But enough yapping, let's put on our anti-dinosaur gear and head back to this dreaded island into this horrifying park.
But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below, including the subscribe and bell notification so you can be a part of every new upload. Also, real quick, just wanted to mention that me and some of the gang are going to be at Phoenix Fan Fusion all 3 days, June 6th through the 8th. Not a feel.
Muldoon's Log Number 1. Our footage begins, and we learn that this tape was captured on Isla Nublar in September of 1991. Turns out this is a behavioral observation log. Our subject is the Velociraptors, and as the title suggested, this is being filmed by Robert Muldoon himself. The camera turns on, and we are now in the eyes of Muldoon, and it sounds like we are going to be going over the feeding procedure for the Velociraptors. Sounds fun. According to Muldoon, the current feeding procedures are not as efficient as he would like them to be.
There are still many things that need smoothing out, but I want to keep it professional and objective in this log.
We are first taken to the entry gates, which are in a set of 2, where the one on the far end won't open until the one behind us is locked. Muldoon compares it to the bird cages at the zoo, if the birds could rip you apart if they got out.
The birds in here, however, won't just escape, they'll gut you to death.
He says that as of now, only a select few handlers and himself are allowed to feed the raptors, and I can only imagine for good reason. If you are one of the few who are allowed access, you swipe your card to enter the enclosure. You usually have a live cow with you. Apparently, they've tried feeding the raptors a plethora of different dead animals, but they then just ignore it. They need to hunt the real thing. The first enclosure we enter is a buffer area, outfitted with a steel barricade and an electric fence. We then approach the actual feeding enclosure. We swipe our card to open the gates, and then we're inside. Muldoon says that where we are now is the very back of the raptor exhibit. He says that small children probably shouldn't witness a cow get torn to shreds by raptors, and so they deemed it best to feed them away from the public eye. This gate area that we are currently standing in is where the cow gets left behind, to which we then would leave the area to let the raptors have their dinner. Poor cow. But that is essentially how the raptors get fed. We learn that there is a new raptor pen being built nearby that's almost complete, and once that happens, the raptors will be transported over there instead. Muldoon takes us closer to the fence, telling us that there are a total of 5 female raptors in the enclosure. He says that they bred 8 of them, and then on the other island, Isla Sorna, they cloned 2 more. But apparently, one of them didn't survive the ride over. So according to Muldoon, that left one quote-unquote big one to be brought to this enclosure. Apparently, when the big one arrived, she killed half of the original group of raptors, and just 4 days ago killed another smaller raptor. So now Muldoon has a constant watch on the big one. Muldoon talks about how he has talked to John Hammond to switch the feeding time to at night, considering they are nocturnal animals, and feeding in the daytime may cause them stress, which is something we really don't want. Right as Muldoon is about to finish off his feeding procedures log, he notices another dead raptor. We then cut ahead a bit, and we see as the dead raptor is airlifted out of the enclosure and taken away. Muldoon theorizes that the big one is to blame for this. He just doesn't know how to prove it. The cameras weren't able to capture anything. While looking at the live footage of the pen, Muldoon notices that the 3 raptors are keeping busy, but the big one is nowhere to be found. However, we are now left with only 4 raptors, and we plan to visit the enclosure during the night to see if the group dynamic has changed. He's expecting the death of another raptor to shake things up a bit. Something that is really cool that we are getting to explore is the big one. It has been a while since I've seen the first Jurassic Park film, so I could be wrong here, but I don't ever remember one of the velociraptors being labeled as the big one. But apparently that title belongs to the velociraptor that kills Muldoon in the movie, and then goes on to hunt down the 2 kids, ultimately meeting its demise at the hands of the T-Rex. I can only imagine that the novelization went more in depth about this raptor, so it's really cool that we are able to see an introduction to this terrifying creature. Who knew that there was such a backstory to that specific dinosaur? I sure didn't know. Just another reason to pick up that damn book. We return to the feeding area once the nighttime rolls around, and we can hear the raptors being as active as ever. We end up getting a good look at 2 of the raptors just hanging around, one of them being the big one. Muldoon mentions that this raptor is costing Hammond a lot of money. When she first arrived, it was clear that she was going to be the one in charge, as any raptor who dared to challenge her were smited pretty quickly. The big one begins to walk off while Muldoon carries on, but then we cut ahead a bit and can see all the raptors having a little meeting. Muldoon says that the big one is making plans for the other raptors. Muldoon is then interrupted during his narration as one of the raptors has started to head away from the group. They have been given some orders from the big one. We follow the raptor for a while until we are met with this evil jump scare. These 2 raptors are said to be the most obedient ones to the big one. And speaking of, the big one seems to have mysteriously vanished. Said to be typical behavior according to Muldoon. She gives out the orders, and then sits back and watches. Nothing crazy seems to be going on for a moment, until we get this next shocking scene. It looks like that raptor did not want to live anymore. Either that, or the big one ordered it to test out the electric fence. And good to know that it works. We also learn that those 2 raptors were acting as a distraction. We have been outsmarted. We then cut to the next day. We zoom in on one of the raptors, and if I'm being honest, I thought they straight up killed it. But as it turns out, they are just tranquilizing them. They shoot the 3 of them down to check out the body of the electrified raptor, who is said to have flown 40 feet away from the fence after the blast, and tragically has died. And I gotta say, it's quite the brutal sight.
My guess is the big one picked on her specifically to test another region of the electric fence.
This is when Muldoon gives us some insight on his inner motivations, saying that he would feel sympathy for the raptor if he didn't have an obsessive need to destroy them before they figure out how to escape. He then tells us that the other sedated raptors are now being moved to another, more secluded area. However, that incident ended up causing yet another casualty, which the ending of this tape lets us know exactly what had happened.
Unfortunately, that wasn't without another casualty.
Just like the last video we did talking about Jurassic Park, it's cool to see these alternate looks into the main movie universe, and it sounds like this collection in particular is managing to blend the events of the books and the movies together, ending off this tape right where the first movie begins. Having not read the book myself, I am not sure just how accurate these tapes are. However, the comments seem to be quite pleased by the adaptation. I'm definitely curious to see what the future tapes have to offer us. Muldoon's Log Number 2. The tape begins, and we can see that we are once again following the velociraptors in this behavioral observation log. The footage begins, and we can see that the raptor that fried itself is now being airlifted away. And so much for being clever. Muldoon says that he plans on heading to wherever the dead raptor is taken, but first has to check on a few things in the enclosure. For the most part, he has to check the other raptors that had been knocked out, making sure the anesthetic and the tranquilizers hasn't caused any bad side effects. He already has to tell Hammond about the cooked velociraptor. He'd rather not face an even greater wrath. We end up approaching the first raptor that looks to be sleeping quite peacefully. Muldoon lets us know that this raptor is named Storm, as it also has a bit of a history attacking the electric fence. Storm is usually in good health, so Muldoon believes that she will be fine. The key things he says he has to look out for would be if their eyes are open, or if there is increased saliva, which this raptor has none of those. The next raptor we have to check is the big one. However, in a frightening turn of events, the big one had already woken up from the sedative. We pull out our weapon and point it right at her. Thankfully, the raptor is still drowsy. This gives the other workers enough time to get out of the pen. Once everyone is confirmed to have made it out safely, Muldoon begins to head back to the gate exit. His theory is that the skin on the big one may be a lot stronger than that of the others, making it to where the entire sedative dose wasn't administered. According to Muldoon, this shouldn't be possible, but then again, the scientists within InGen are pretty psychotic when it comes to creating dinosaur advancements. Muldoon even refers to the big one as a Frankenstein mishmash monster. Our scene then cuts ahead a bit, later into the night, where we see one of the raptors just pacing back and forth. Muldoon says this is a sign that the raptors aren't very happy with their environment. He also says that at certain points throughout the night, the big one would always go to the same spot, where he said it looks like the big one is calling out to something outside of the enclosure. I don't think I even want to know what other dinosaur that raptor is talking to. Knowing my luck, she's planning on ganging up with the T-Rex. We then get a closer look at the raptor, and now correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost looks like the raptor knows that it's being filmed. The tape then cuts ahead 5 days later, and it looks like Muldoon is showing off the new, but incomplete, Velociraptor pen, specifically complaints that he has with this place. He says that it is essentially a concrete pit in the ground with an electrified ceiling, and honestly, looking inside the pit here, it doesn't look nearly big enough to hold the raptors, unless perhaps it's connected to a much larger area. However, Muldoon is going to have to take us inside the pen to go over all of his issues. Once we are inside, it becomes very clear how small this place is. Even Muldoon makes mention of it.
Constrained to living quarters not much larger than your average apartment in Leeds in the UK.
His main worries is that these animals are pretty intelligent, so keeping them in such cramped spaces for too long may result in them showing disordered behaviors. Which disordered behaviors is the last thing you want to see a velociraptor have. Muldoon then starts to question why John even cleared for this pen to be in use anyways. This doesn't do very well when trying to show off raptors to the park goers, so he assumes that they must be off the tour. But then, if they are off the tour, then why are they still being cloned? Be careful, Muldoon. Keep questioning and you may end up as raptor food. Before we cut ahead to the next segment, Muldoon tells us his final complaint, and that is the fact that there is just one hole at the top of the cage for them to drop the cow from. There was a multi-door system when it came to feeding them last time, so let's hope only having one won't cause any problems. We are then taken to the next day, and Muldoon is on his way back to the raptor pen. However, on his way over, he finds what looks to be a stegosaurus flopped over on its side. He reports this over the radio and has someone on their way to check things out. We then cut ahead into the night, and we find ourselves back at the velociraptor enclosure. According to Muldoon, he has been given permission from Hammond to do the feeding procedures at night. Apparently, it took a few strong words back and forth to get the go-ahead. However, we hope that this will help with the raptor's aggression. We aren't alone in this instance as we have our friend Robbie with us, and he brings in this cow with him, ready to become a raptor dinner. We learn that the cow is named Mildred, and now I don't want anything to happen to her. The camera cuts ahead, and we can see as Mildred is now in the feeding section of the cage. Muldoon takes notice of the fact that the raptors haven't approached the feeder yet. It's possible it's because this is the first time they had done this at night. However, it still is a little odd. We jump ahead and can see that the enclosure gates have now been opened, and Mildred is now wandering the area, blissfully unaware of what fate awaits her. Some time passes and there is still no sign of the raptors. The three of them then appear out of nowhere, and the big one starts to approach Mildred. This is when Muldoon then notices something lurking in the background.
What the?
You definitely don't want to be unaware of the total amount of raptors you have in the enclosure, especially when we remember back to when we were just walking around through the pen, believing all the raptors were sedated. Turns out there was one just freely moving about. It almost looked like some supercharged raptor with its eyes glowing like that. Perhaps it's the raptor that shocked itself coming back from the dead. I've been enjoying how grounded these tapes have been so far, and also how informative they've been too. It's cool getting the whole rundown over how this feeding process works in the last tape, to then get to see it brought to life in this one, even if it comes at the cost of poor Mildred. Muldoon's log number 3. This tape begins right where the last one left off. Muldoon tells Robbie to run to the Jeep to radio Arnold, aka Sam Jackson. However, when we look back, the mysterious fourth raptor is now missing. We then get to listen as Muldoon gets on the radio with Arnold, while in the background we see as poor Mildred is getting chased by the raptors. Muldoon is rightfully pretty pissed off about the whole situation, and tells Arnold to pull up the dinosaur inventory. Interestingly enough, it's been recorded that they should have 4 raptors in the enclosure. This confuses Muldoon, but according to Arnold, Dr. Wu had made the decision to transfer a juvenile raptor into the area. Muldoon then goes off even more, considering this decision was not run by him, and that he had himself and others in the pen with a raptor on the loose. Muldoon also says that what he saw was a fully adult raptor, not a juvenile. The next day then arrives, and we hear about how Muldoon and Henry Wu got into quite the screaming match over this 4th raptor situation. Muldoon has said time and time again that there has to be better communication between the people who sit in the labs all day and the people who actually have to go out into the park. So now Muldoon is at the enclosure trying to capture more footage of that mysterious raptor. During his investigation, he comes across the 3 other raptors who are oddly still awake, and he is curious about the arrangement they are sitting in. He isn't exactly sure why they are hanging out like this. He is also confused about how this 4th raptor is now nowhere to be found, even when looking back at the surveillance footage and motion detection cameras from last night, so no signs of this strange dinosaur. The camera then cuts out, and we are taken to a different section of the park, the Ankylosaurus enclosure. Muldoon has been called over by someone named Jerry over the radio to check things out. Apparently, he heard a lot of ruckus going on last night, and these dinos are normally pretty quiet. Jerry also informs us that the Stegosaurus we saw briefly on its side in the last tape is now dead. Tragic news. Oddly enough, it's said that there were a bunch of little bite marks onto the body, to which Muldoon believes that to be from those little tiny dinos we see at the beginning of The Lost World. So far, however, Muldoon doesn't see anything out of the ordinary at the gate we are at, until he turns and sees the Ankylosaurus slumped down in the moat. We go to get a closer look, and the other dino comes out to check on things. We learn that her name is Martha. Unfortunately, it looks like this poor bastard died due to the fall. We try to ask Martha about how this could have happened, but she doesn't answer us. Muldoon orders in a crane to extract the body, as we climb down into the moat to inspect things closer. Once closer to the body, we confirm that she likely died on impact. Hopefully Martha stands back so she doesn't fall as well. Muldoon then hears something off in the distance.
We're down to 15 Ankies.
Quiet, Jerry.
Oh,
No, I mean, I hear something.
Well, I couldn't hear anything, but he swears it's coming from inside the moat. We slowly turn the corner, but thankfully nothing is able to be seen here, other than just a drainage pipe. We go to get a closer look, and it definitely sounds like something is in there.
No. Sounds bigger.
In a very tense scene, we get even closer inside the pipe, and ready our weapon. The flashlight flicks on, but we don't see anything. We proceed to look around for a bit to see if we can find whatever made the noise, and I knew that this damn scene was coming, but it still got me anyways.
Christ.
There's actually something in this scene that is very easy to miss. As Muldoon walks closer to the drain pipe, we see the shadow of a raptor looming overhead. Seems like we may have found our culprit. We are then brought ahead of the crane, picking up the body out of the moat. We turn and can see that we are just hanging out with Martha. I guess she isn't all that dangerous. We then check out the security footage from the night before, to see how this fall had happened. Muldoon says that the dinosaur was running around like crazy, as if she was being attacked. She ends up at the edge of the moat and swings her tail as if attacking another dinosaur, but inevitably ends up slipping and falling in. We then cut ahead to later in the night, as Muldoon has been assigned to a perimeter check for the T-Rex paddock. Yeah, no thanks. I'll be turning in my 2 weeks now. Muldoon looks around and we can see all the construction happening on the main road. Apparently, the section is being expanded. We look up at the top of the electric fence and can see that the wire is flickering from the rain. It hasn't failed, but it's on track to. We then hear the T-Rex herself, and Muldoon begins to describe the presence of one, what it is like to be near one of the most terrifying creatures to ever exist.
When a Rex moves, you don't hear quick steps. You hear mass settling, soil adjusting.
Again, yeah, no thanks. Muldoon claims that the T-Rex seems a little restless tonight, which is never a good sign. This whole segment is quite intense. We can't see the T-Rex, but we know that it's there. It really shows off just how well they are at keeping hidden. You'd think they would be loud and clumsy, but unfortunately, they are the exact opposite. Muldoon goes on to say that if the electric fence were to ever go out, the T-Rex would be able to feel it, and would approach the fence instantly to check things out. Sort of like how in the movie, the T-Rex is quick to escape after the power goes out. As we walk along the perimeter, we are being followed by the T-Rex. We get this view from one of the security feeds, where we get to see the frightening bastard. we end up seeing yet another cow in the T-Rex enclosure, and apparently this cow has been here since the afternoon. I wonder what is causing the delay. However, we then see the T-Rex sneaking up from behind.
And there's the big girl.
Muldoon goes on to describe how the T-Rex won't go in for the kill until it knows for sure that it will succeed without injury. And that's when we see that this cow may have the worst luck imaginable.
Until she's decided that it's safe to do so. Oh. Well, look who it is.
What's worse than one T-Rex? Two of them. Well, that was certainly an entertaining and intense handful of tapes. Again, it was very nice to be brought back into the world of Jurassic Park. This time heavily focusing on the first movie as we follow Muldoon in his logs, documenting the behind-the-scenes happenings at the park, as well as his personal issues he has with how it's run. This whole series proved that I need to get into reading the books as soon as possible. I would be super curious to learn more about the infamous raptor known as the Big One, or the existence of this second T-Rex. I said it earlier, but I really like how grounded these tapes were. They essentially were just training tapes for new employees, going over the feeding procedures and just following Muldoon around on his daily duties. It was also very frightening to see the raptors take the center stage. The idea that there is this super intelligent raptor is horrifying to think about, and to see it in action is a whole other level. It really adds to the depth of these dinosaurs, and I'll never see that one raptor from the first movie the same after this. Needless to say, I highly recommend these Jurassic Park analog horror tapes if you haven't seen them already. It seems to be faithfully adapting the books and bringing them to life, something we have all been wanting to see for quite some time now. However, that'll probably be about it for this video. As always, be sure to head down into the description below to check out the original series to support the creator, and be sure to keep on leaving me recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord. But if you'll excuse me, I need to go and cancel my application for Jurassic Park.